To become a chilled parent that has time for yourself, feels fulfilled and full of energy, can still pursue your personal goals as well as being a present parent with a great relationship with your kids, there are 5 skills you need to master. In this podcast, I take you through each one and share with you information, tips, and real-life stories about how we can implement these in our daily lives as working parents, so you can finally step into the joy of parenthood without losing yourself. Hello, and welcome to the Chilled Parent Podcast. I am Jane Hughes, and I'll be the host of this podcast. Today's episode, I'm really going to just break down whether or not you should stick around. So I'm going to talk about my own personal journey with this work to becoming a chilled parent, a chilled working parent, I should say. And I'm also going to describe to you what this podcast is for, what we're going to be covering, so you can decide if you'd like to subscribe and if it's going to be useful to you because you're busy. I don't want to waste your time if this isn't for you. So I'm going to firstly talk a little bit about my own journey into this work and how I came to do this. And then I'll dive into what we're going to be covering, okay? So my own personal journey with this is I have 3 children. They are 5, 3, and 1. So we had them very close together. It was pretty intense, as I'm sure some of you can imagine. And throughout that time, I have been a working parent. And so finding the balance between, work and life has been a journey. Before I became a parent, I was someone who was quite emotionally resilient. I was quite ambitious and I knew kind of the results I wanted to create in my life. I knew what I wanted and I never really had many problems just kind of going for it. I was quite good at dealing with stress and weathering out bad times. And that eventually led me to becoming a coach. And when I first started out coaching, I was coaching a lot around stress and emotional health for obvious reasons. Then when I had my kids, I just found that the tools and the processes that I had used before becoming a parent to achieve what I wanted to achieve in life no longer seemed to get me the results that I wanted. I was like, oh, this is difficult. Like, I can't create the result I want just by working harder. That doesn't work anymore. So I had to really kind of go on a bit of a journey of self-discovery and really take a step back and figure out, where I was going wrong and what I needed to do to create the result that I wanted. And I'm just going to go through the result that I wanted to create personally, because this is very much what the podcast is going to focus on, okay? So when I became a parent, the result that I was creating before I did this work was that I was quite often overwhelmed and stressed, and I would be like living in my head a lot. So I was constantly thinking about things that I had to do to keep on top of things. When I was with my kids, I didn't really feel like I was very present with them, and I couldn't really enjoy it very much because I was constantly just thinking about the things that I needed to be doing or getting on with. I was thinking about deadlines for work. I was thinking about things that needed to be done around the house. I was thinking about things that needed to be organized for them for the coming up week so that they had stuff to do. I was worried about if they were stimulated enough, if they had enough going on in terms of like activities when I was at work. And, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm guessing you know what it's like. It was just sort of never ending and it just made me miserable, and at work, I didn't really feel like I was doing an amazing job at work anymore. I didn't really feel like I could push myself to take on any more because I just felt like, if I take on any more, I'm going to burn out. So I just then really felt like I wasn't growing or pushing myself anymore in that sense, which is important to me as a person. And so as I said, I went on my own journey of self-discovery. I went through my own coaching and really sort of had to figure out how to create the result that I wanted. And the result that I wanted and the result that this podcast is all about creating is this. I wanted to feel like I had energy. I didn't want to feel exhausted all the time. I wanted to feel present with whatever I was doing, not always in my head. So when I was with my kids, I wanted to feel like I was with them and I was enjoying them and I wasn't always thinking about something else. And when I was at work, I wanted to focus on being at work and not always thinking about my kids. And I also wanted to be I wanted to feel like I was fulfilled, like I was doing things that made me feel like myself, like I was growing as a person, like I was still achieving things that I wanted to achieve, whether that was, health-wise or business-wise, whatever that was. I wanted to feel like I was still growing and achieving goals, as well as being a good mom and a present parent. So that was the result I wanted to create, and I have been successful in that. I can tell you that that's my life now. I feel very comfortable. When I'm at work, I'm thinking about work. When I'm with my kids, I'm thinking about my kids. I feel very relaxed most of the time, not all the time. There's no such thing as perfection. And I feel energized and happy with the way that my life is at the moment. And so when I went through that journey as a coach myself, I was like, okay, well, what is the process that I really had to go through here? What are the skills that I was lacking in before I became a parent that I really needed to develop in order to create this result? And over time, I've kind of honed this down into 5 steps that I believe are really important for creating this result. And that's what this podcast is going to be about. It's about these 5 steps. And so the reason that I'm creating this podcast is primarily as a resource for my clients. I want them to have a resource that just helps them to really dive deeper into the work that they're doing, because when you do coaching, it's not necessarily like you come to a call and it's like, okay, today we're working on step 1. It's fluid and you work on these things simultaneously. So I wanted to create the podcast to just give them a greater awareness of the process that they're actually going through over the 6 months, so that they can, have a greater awareness and dive deeper into that. But I also wanted to create it just as a free resource for any parents who want to create this result. Even if you're not a working parent, these processes still apply. So I just wanted to put it out there as a resource to help any parent who wants to create a better work-life balance. And when I say work, that word can really apply to any aspect of your life where you feel it's just for you, for your own personal growth. It doesn't have to be a job. It can be anything. But I want to help you create that balance, okay? So if this is a result that you would like to create in your own life, then stick around. This podcast is for you. So go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. In the next few episodes of the podcast, I'm really going to dig into why parenthood in the modern day is so stressful, because I do believe it's more stressful now than it ever has been. I think there are a particular set of circumstances that we're up against now as parents that we've never been up against in the past. So I'm going to go through what those are. And then I'm going to break down my 5 steps for you. I'm going to tell you exactly what those are. And then each month of the podcast, we're going to focus on one of those steps. We're going to really dive into that step, how to implement it into your day-to-day life, what challenges you might come up against, what mind management techniques you may need. And so we're going to really just dig into this work. So if this is a result that you're interested in creating, hit subscribe. I would really appreciate it as well if you could share this with anybody else who you think might find this work desirable, anybody else who you think might want to create this result in their life. And I'm excited to dive into this with you. Okay? All right. I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Chilled Parent Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about me and my work, then come visit me at www.livelongandlush.com. That's live, long, and the full word, lush.com. Or connect with me on my Instagram or Facebook at Jane Hughes Coaching. That's Jane with a Y, Hughes, Hughs. See you next time.